Hi everyone, welcome back to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Before I move ahead, let me very quickly read out this very important disclaimer. By watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. All right, after this very important disclaimer, welcome back everyone to another exciting episode of Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Today, we are diving into one of the hottest topics in US immigration, the TN visa, and what the future might hold, especially with the upcoming 2024 election looming. To help us navigate this complex and ever changing landscape, we have a true expert in the field, Fadi Minawi, a US immigration attorney with over 18 years of experience. Fadi has helped thousands of individuals, especially Canadian nationals, securing TN visas under the USMCA. His vast knowledge extends beyond just TN visas, though he is a trusted guide for those looking to secure other key work visas like the E2, L1, and O1. As the founder of US Canadian Visa Legal LLC, Fadi is dedicated to providing personalized and strategic legal solution to professionals and businesses aiming to expand to the US. And in today's episode, we're exploring how potential election outcomes in 2025 could impact TN visa holders and what professionals need to know as we prepare for potential changes in immigration policy. So get ready for an insightful conversation with one of the top experts in the field of US and Canadian immigration. So without any further ado, let's welcome Fadi Minawi to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Welcome, Fadi. Welcome to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Rajni, and thanks for having me on here today.
Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure having you on the show. And Fadi, this is your first time on Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. So how are
Yes.
you feeling?
Oh,
And
feeling good, and happy for the opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Fadi, this topic is a little bit different than what we usually do because we try to cover visas on our shows. But this topic, we'll be talking more about the politics and what the elections could bring,
Mhm.
for Canadian nationals, US nationals, and also for Mexicans. So, what can people expect from today's episode?
Yeah, so I wanted to go over what to anticipate when applying for a TN from a Canadian perspective, as well as from a Mexican national perspective, and what are the possible changes that can be expected with the looming election around the corner.
Right, right. Okay, so thank you so much for that, Fadi. And now, before I get into all the political questions, before that, I would like to actually ask you, if you can please give a quick overview of the TN visa and what are the benefits of this visa and how it currently functions for professionals from Canada and Mexico.
Right. Yeah. So certainly. So the TN visa, TN status for Canadians, and I say it's TN status for Canadians because Canadians don't require an actual visa for entering with a TN. Mexican
Mhm.
nationals do. So the difference is that when Canadians apply for it, they may apply for it at the port of entry, or they may apply for it through the service center. So it can be done from within the U.S., outside the U.S., but it's quite quick from a Canadian perspective. It is the quickest work authorization that can be obtained. Quicker than anything else. It's a matter of getting a job offer, getting the proper support documents, support letter, and just as easily going to a port of entry and making the application with the adjudication being had right there and then. But to give a little bit of a history first, and just very briefly, the TN is
Mhm.
nothing new. The TN has been in use since the predecessor to the USMCA, which is NAFTA, which is a North American Free Trade Agreement. So that's been in place since 1994.
Mhm.
And it is essentially a trilateral treaty between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. So although those wishing to go to the U.S. under this TN would apply for the TN visa or TN status, likewise, U.S. citizens can also get work authorization in Canada or in Mexico. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm only talking about those outgoing to the U.S. And
Mhm.
So with that being said, the TN can be issued for up to 3 years. It is renewable indefinitely. It is considered as a temporary status or temporary visa. So sometimes individuals, they end up having the opportunity to be sponsored by a company in the U.S. and it is possible. It's just a matter of going about it the right way. So with the temporary intent, that's what sometimes creates that issue to bridge the gap between the person is there working under the TN, but all of a sudden the company is sponsoring them for a green card. So definitely the quickest way for a Canadian to get it. It's quick for a Mexican national to get it as well. And it can happen through the consulate. It can happen, if the Mexican nationals in the U.S., they can also apply for it through the service center as a change of status. That's possible. And it's with a quick turnaround usually comes with with a lower cost as well. The drawback to the TN, it's not a silver bullet solution to everything, because the drawback is that it is for professionals, and there are only so many occupations under this list. And this list is also a little bit antiquated. Okay, it is outdated. And there, even with the recent changes with the free trade agreement in 2020, unfortunately the list didn't change, so it remained the same. And we find ourselves that sometimes individuals, they get a job offer and then they find themselves trying to sort of navigate and see how they can fall into one of these TN categories, if at all possible. But it does cover some of the sciences. There's various professions: accountants, obviously engineers, statisticians, mathematicians, zoologists. I mean, there's all kinds of different categories. Attorneys are on there as well.
Right. Thank you so much for explaining that in detail, and thank you so much for the answer, Fadi. Now that the elections, with the upcoming election, so now let me get into that. So, how do you foresee the outcome of 2024 election, firstly, and how do you see, is it going to affect the TN visa? And particularly if okay, let's go one by one. So, how do you foresee the outcome of the 2024 election affecting the TN visa?
Yeah, I mean, so the elephant in the room is always going to be discussions with the Trump administration and its general anti-immigration slant to policy. But despite that, I think it's not the first time we've been through a Trump administration, and even when I recall, with the last administration, when Trump prevailed, we saw initially there was a stricter immigration enforcement during that administration. There were no real fundamental changes made to the TN program itself. I did notice, on a personal basis, in dealing with clients and some of the questions that they were getting and so forth, that there was definitely more scrutiny. Sometimes even the documents that were used to present as part of the application were more strictly enforced. So overall, in terms of the TN process itself, there were no changes, and I really don't anticipate that any major changes are going to be coming down the pipeline, even with Trump, if Trump is elected. Because keeping in mind, this is also a reciprocal treaty, right? So there are Americans that apply for the same thing. It's not called the same thing, but it's based on the same treaty to get work authorization in Canada and again Mexico and vice versa. So nothing really substantial in terms of no real substantial changes, but there can be subtle changes with what somebody can experience when they are actually presenting an application. So just to put things in a little slightly different way, one of the most common application types I find is a category called management consultant. And so the management consultant is it's used quite substantially, particularly because it is one of the few categories that does not require an actual degree. Okay, it doesn't require a university degree. It can be based on having experience, 5 years of experience within the same field that the person is going to be providing consulting on, or even having consulting experience. And regardless of the administration, these are always scrutinized quite heavily. And so during the last Trump administration, particularly at the beginning, I think I would say, if I recall correctly, probably the first several months, we did see some unusual adjudications. Okay, so and there are people that were seemingly would qualify, but they were turned away or just given more of a hard time. And I would anticipate that this is probably going to be the same type of scenario that may happen. It's just a matter of making sure everything is so well put together and leave very little room for error or for a broader interpretation for what the person is entering for.
Okay, so but don't you think there's going to be maybe more stricter or maybe more lenient approach depending on whether Republicans or the Democrats win?
It could be, yeah, definitely. So with from the Democrats' perspective, they generally did have a more lenient approach to immigration itself. It's not always it's not always just to protect the U.S. job at all costs possible. And we have seen looking outside of the TN program itself, there were some introductions that were made, especially I'm thinking of one this year, that I don't think would have seen the light of day with a Trump administration.
Okay. But Fadi, also in 2017, if you remember, there were travel bans and there was also increased scrutiny over work visas, right? If you remember. So could we see them repeating if Trump comes to the office for the second term?
I would anticipate that there would be some of the same sentiment happening from that administration. And despite these travel bans that were introduced during the previous administration, well, during Trump's administration, it was supposed to be cleaned up during the Biden administration, but the practicality of it is that we still have seen individuals that were part of that that travel ban that are still to this day experiencing problems.
Okay, but what about him saying that there's going to be mass deportation and he's going to deport a lot of people, and so what about those speeches? How do you see those things?
I mean, when you hear these types of speeches and a certain slant to immigration, it's likely going to have a role, but probably more so for the illegal immigrants, right, and people that are not entering the U.S. During using legal processes. So going back to sort of the TN itself, the TN is something that is, it is if used properly, it's certainly a legal process to enter the U.S. and get work authorization. It is not something. I think Canadians and Mexican nationals that do have the proper authorization to do work in the U.S. I don't think that's going to be really the main focus for the Trump administration. And also, like, looking at the number of people that actually apply for TNs and how many TNs are issued, it's less than a third of what we see with the H-1Bs. And if we recall, during the previous Trump administration, there were some subtle changes again introduced to the H-1Bs, but it still existed, and existed in the tens of thousands of numbers.
Mhm.
So, do I think that a Trump administration is going to bring to a halt any Canadians being able to enter on a TN? Not at all. I just think that again, it's not a one side street here, right? There are, if there's a halt to it, well then Canada's going to be doing the same, Mexico's going to be doing the same under this program. I mean, it's not simply as simple as just signing off on a certain bill for that.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much for taking that up and answering the question. Fadi, with this, I would like to come to my next question, which is about Project 2025. So, if you
Mhm.
can please explain, how Project 2025 could alter the landscape of TN visa applications, and I'm sure there must be a lot of them who don't know what Project 2025 is. So, if you can please start by explaining what Project 2025 is.
Right. Yeah. So Project 2025, it's really it's outlining it's a restrictive approach to immigration. I mean, it's to various topics, but immigration is certainly part of it. And it introduces changes that in theory could affect TN applications. But there are proposals within the project that emphasize both on restricting legal and obviously illegal immigration. And the slant on that is to protect American jobs, right? And it's just taking a moment here, even from from an adjudicator's perspective. So when the adjudicator actually looks at a TN application, they may bring in their own biases into the process, and I've seen it before based on some of what my clients relay back, right, in terms of, hey, there's I went and I kind of got the cold shoulder. The person told me, my nephew's looking for a job, and here you are as a Canadian coming in and taking a job. So it's a popular sentiment, but regardless. When it comes to TN and Project 25, I mean, it could translate to, again, even more stringent eligibility criteria, perhaps additional documentation requirements. Maybe there's going to be limitations on, what specific industries may use TN. Also, one aspect is that it advocates for minimizing, reliance generally on foreign labor. So again, it's a U.S. comes first mentality, which is quite common, and not just with this writing. It is also it's seen again across the sentiment for many Americans. This is just a little bit more. It's put together in a document. It could also lead to reduced approval rates, and possibly even changes to the occupational list. I'm hoping, and just because of how old this occupational list is, that it is going to be updated. As I mentioned, it is very antiquated, and a lot of people find themselves struggling to see, well, what how am I going to fit myself within this occupation? Like, what changes need to be made and so forth.
Okay, but so do you think the political pressure to hire American will reduce opportunities for the for people with TN visas?
So the TN, unlike the other some other visa categories, right? So there is no labor certification. There's no perm application. So there's not a obligation from an employer to have to first demonstrate that they cannot find any local, U.S. workers, whether they be
Right.
citizens or permanent residents. So long as the individual does qualify for the position, meeting the educational qualifications or experiential qualifications, and that the role itself is considered temporary. Um, it's not as it stands now, as it is with these regulations. Technically, an employer can say, yeah, I have 5 people lined up for this engineering position. but I want so and so who's a Canadian to come in and do this work. Maybe there's a certain reason for it. It's really not up to the adjudicators to say, as it stands now, that no, you should be looking at these other candidates first before you look at this Canadian. And again, I say that, but sometimes the reality is that adjudicators do take that stance, which is frankly inappropriate right now.
Right, right. Okay, so now with this, I would like to come to my next question, which is about the economic consequences. So, Fadi, what economic consequences do you anticipate if stricter immigration policies are reinstated, especially regarding industries that rely heavily on TN visa holders like technology and healthcare?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if there are stricter policies that are introduced, industries that do rely heavily on the TN, including engineering, technology, healthcare, they could face some level of disruption. Again, I think we're overstating how much maybe the TN is sometimes used. It'll I mean, by all means, it can create a disruption, and I've seen that firsthand from companies that reach out to me and say, I need this person in, I need or so many people in, and under this category for a period of time, and if they can't get in within 3 weeks, I lose a contract or something. So there are definitely disruptions. Skilled professionals from both Canada and Mexico, they do contribute to innovation. There is healthcare aspect to it as well, including registered nurses. So they do contribute to patient care and the tech workforce itself. Therefore, if there is some sort of restrictions where maybe there's a reduction in TN approvals, it could lead to some level of labor shortages. And if companies do rely heavily on hiring people on the TN, knowing that it is generally low cost, it is generally quick, and they cannot, and then if they have to, rather than rely on the TN, rely on something else like the H-1B, which does have a cap, which has a certain number of it's a certain period of time during the year, or sometimes a couple times during the year, where they can be applied for. It is it is a much better solution, obviously, to use a TN. So just looking at it from a real practical perspective, you and I, Rajni, we're talking right now in October. It's October 2024. Well, now if somebody reached out and said, hey, I need to hire this engineer, very, very specialized in his or her field. I need to bring them in, within a month or 2 months, even 3 months before the end of the year, whatever it may be. That's not practical with an H-1B today, right? So with the H-1B, I would say, we can talk about this maybe beginning of 2025 to see whether we can proceed with an H-1B. There's initially a registration that has to be made. Then that's when the lottery itself is, it's done in beginning of April, and right. If that's selected, well, great, it's selected, but that's for a start date in October. So you and I are talking right now in October of 2024 and saying, yeah, we can help you and we can get you so and so to come in and work for you, and if all goes well, that person can start for you in October of 2025. It's not very practical from a business perspective, right? So if there are restrictions, it does harm not only industries that rely on this, but the economy as a whole, because it is ultimately also reducing competitiveness from a more of a global perspective.
Right, right. So, what do you suggest? What strategies can the applicants employ to prepare for these, potential changes?
Yeah. So, for any potential changes with, when it comes to the TN you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, just be very, very well prepared for any of these for your application. If that means, if it means not only relying on the company's HR, that sometimes they, and that's one of the downfalls, by the way. Sometimes companies, they look at the TN and say, oh yeah, we do these, we can do this for you. We do them all the time, and they use some sort of a template and it's not exactly accurate, for the very scenario or the very situation of a person applying for a TN. So making sure that everything is really ironclad, that's one thing. If a company right now is on the fence, do they want to proceed with a TN ahead of any potential um, any potential change that could be made with the program itself? It's probably a good idea to get started on it, because again, if things are like what we've seen before, I don't think there's going to be it's not going to be a 180 shift in terms of of this program, but you're going to find maybe some more stricter interpretations to the program itself, and officers may sometimes officers they feel that depending on who is elected, they may feel empowered, so to speak, to say to uphold the sentiments of that leader, right? So if something is on the horizon, then I like to deal with what we know rather than what we don't know. And so starting with that process now is probably a good idea.
Right, right. So, Fadi, also, with as an immigration attorney yourself, do you think people's opinion or maybe public's opinion has shifted regarding immigration since Trump's first term?
Yeah, so I think public sentiment, obviously, it does change. Immigration is always a hot button topic when it comes to these elections. And I think it does play a role in obviously in the election itself, with what one person's own views are, particularly now in a sort of a post-pandemic world.
Yeah.
Public sentiment does play a significant role in, I think, shaping policy. Right, there is increased concern for individuals with respect to job security, and with job security, if you're an American in the U.S. and maybe your role is not as it's not solid as one would like, or maybe you're looking for a job, then yeah, you're going to have a certain viewpoint as to what you think about immigration. So it does play a role, even for those that are coming in illegally. We're not even talking about the illegal aliens that are illegal immigrants that go to the U.S. We're talking about all this from a legal perspective, of course, and industries, in tech and so forth, where they do depend on foreign workers. So there can be in a way a counterbalance as to a negative sentiment, and generally speaking, the rhetoric and media coverage also can play a role with influencing how people think about this topic.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much for answering the question, Fadi, again. Now, I would like to actually move to some viewers' question. A lot of
Mhm.
viewers have joined us. We are getting questions from the viewers, and also I have Facebook questions. So maybe before I move into the viewers' question, let me quickly take questions from the Facebook groups, because a lot of people have posted regarding TN visas.
Okay, great.
So let me quickly take that, and maybe after that I can move to viewers, and if we have time, then I can move to my own question that I prepared for you. Okay,
Sure.
so here we have. Let me quickly read it out for you. Okay, Rough Riders. He says, "Hi, what are the chances of getting TN visa after applying for EB2 NIW? I understand the TN visa is a non-immigrant visa, and an EB2 NIW application already in place may conflict with that intent. I want to know, how can we showcase our intent in such cases?"
Okay,
What do
well,
you have
that's
to
a good
say?
question. Yeah, it's a good question. Um, and this inherent sort of contradiction, it does come up quite more frequently than you can probably imagine. because in this case, he's indicating that there's a potential, there's an NIW application
Mm-hmm.
process that is a green card application. So how does one balance already having an application in place while trying to get a TN in the interim? And it really boils down to making sure that both the applicant and the adjudicator understands the difference here. So when a person's applying for a TN, and hopefully they can showcase that they still have strong enough ties to Canada when doing so, an officer could in fact bring up that there's an underlying application, you're applying for a TN. These are two contradictory types of statuses to have. And the way I normally overcome this is by showing that the underlying, in this case, he's talking about an EB2 NIW application, but could be a spousal sponsorship, family sponsorship, could be anything. That application may be done as a consular application. So when we talk about a consular application, we're talking about the green card application being sort of finalized in at the consulate. So if it's a Canadian, it's going to be at the U.S. consulate in Montreal. So when we say that it's going to be finalized there, it's not that person is not applying as an adjustment of status in the U.S. where there would be that contradiction. But rather, once the EB2 NIW is finalized and the interview is to be had, that person would need to leave the U.S. Right. So because they need to leave the U.S., they are still entering on a TN temporarily, and sometimes it's a matter of just having a logical explanation, just or an understanding of what this other application is entailing. What does it entail versus the TN? So with the TN, I would say, yes, I'm coming in and applying for this today. It is temporary work because at some point I need to leave the U.S. to go back to Canada and attend my interview. So no matter how you slice it, this is temporary.
Okay. So, also a lot of people have also commented down. So let me quickly read the comments for you. So Barry Cross says, in general, just filing the application is not sufficient ground to deny TN status. Once you're approved and file your I-485, that's another story. Document your continued strong ties to Canada, lease, mortgage, associations with churches, credit unions, banks, doctors, dentists, car registration, driving license, etc. So do you think this will help? What Barry has commented?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same sort of sentiment. Just saying that filing the application itself is not sufficient to deny it. It's not exactly accurate, right? Because at the end of the day, an application for a TN, it does have some level of discretion from the officer. So if the officer thinks that the person is coming in here, applying for a TN, and it's just a sort of a way just to get into the U.S. and get that temporary, or get that work authorization in the interim. And then if the officer has reason to believe that the person is going to be applying for the adjustment of status, then yeah, they could deny the TN. And because TNs are very discretionary, it's not a science here, right? You do have officers that do have some level of discretion. And I go back to what I said, earlier, that as long as the applicant can demonstrate that they have strong ties in Canada or Mexico, whatever the case may be, and that they are entering temporarily because at some point they have to leave the U.S. for the adjudication. That's the way I would sort of respond to the officer.
Okay, all right. So, Rough Riders, I hope you have got your answer from Fadi. And if you have, make sure you subscribe to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. And if you have a follow up, please continue writing your follow up questions in the comments below. We'll definitely get back with an answer for you. And now, Abhi Reddy is also here, and he says, hello, everyone. I'm going for a TN renewal. Do I need to do WES again, or does my old WES report should be okay?
Yeah. So what Abby is talking about is the actual evaluation. It's not needed to get a new valuation for every TN application. Sometimes, taking a look at the organizations that are there's a NACES.org is where to look at for evaluation companies that are relevant to give evaluation. Sometimes officers use that list to say, oh, your evaluation's from a different company, therefore I'm not going to take it at face value. Okay, so that happens. But in this case, as far as I'm concerned, Wes is still on the list. And if Abby used this for an application that probably would have been within the last 3 years, then I would say, you don't need to get another one. You can use the same one.
Okay. So, okay, let me quickly move to Abhi Reddy. If you have got your answer, I hope you have by now. If you have, please make sure you subscribe to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. And if you have a follow-up, please also write to us. Okay, so we have a follow-up here on WhatsApp. Fadi, what if they have new education after they got the evaluation report?
So if they have new education, and if the education is also it's from a non-Canadian or obviously U.S. or Mexican educational institute, then if they qualified based on the previous education, I don't see why they would need to get another evaluation, right? If it's the same role, then I wouldn't find it to be necessary.
Okay. So I hope it's clear now. Thank you so much for your follow-up question, and to Abhi, thank you so much for posting your question in the group. And let us know if you have another follow-up. And then we have a question from Shruti. She says, do UI, IX, and front-end web developer designer roles qualify for TN visa categories? What do you have to say, Fadi?
It really does depend on how the role is broken down. For that, you probably want to speak to a professional to go over the duties in more detail. The short answer is it could, but it does depend on the role itself.
Okay. So, I think Barry has also commented over here, and he says you also need to review job description, etc., based on OOH.
Yeah, that's the Occupational Outlook Handbook. Right.
Okay, and Asma is here, and she says, "Hi everyone, looking for help with attorney who can do TN visa package ASAP." So, yes, I think right here we can definitely give your number, right? So,
Yeah,
Asma,
definitely.
we would like to say that if you are still looking for an attorney, you should get in touch with Fadi. Here are his details. You can give him a call. Here are his two numbers, actually. So, 716-281-8018, and his another number is 647-528-8253. You can give him a call on either of these, and you can also write an email to him on his mail ID, which is fadi@uscanvisa.com. fadi@uscanvisa.com. And you can also visit his website, which is www.uscanvisa.com, which is uscanadavisa.com, right, Fadi?
Just USCAN visa. Yeah, that's what the
uscanvisa.com.
yes.
Okay, all right. So do reach out to him, Asma, and I think he'll be able to help you with your issue.
Certainly.
And then Ujjwal is also here. He says, "Hi folks, I'm a Canadian citizen looking for genuine consultancies to find a role of regulatory." Okay, I think this is completely different. Cyber security. Kishan Patel is here. He says, "Cyber security analyst occupation is eligible for TN visa."
So this is one of those occupations where no, you're not going to find, the actual title on the TN occupation list as a cybersecurity analyst. There is a computer systems analyst. So it again comes down to what the duties are. Does it align with what a CSA is supposed to be doing? And if so, then it could be possible, assuming that the underlying education and or experience align with what's required for this TN.
Okay. Okay.
But I've
So,
had, so
Kishan,
for example, cybersecurity, just to give you an idea, I've had clients that are maybe they're cybersecurity analysts, and maybe they have their own company in Canada, for example. They may go in as perhaps as a contractor to do work as a computer systems analyst, or sometimes they may not qualify based on their credentials as a computer systems analyst, but they are still going in to provide consulting, so they may qualify as a management consultant. And what just brings me to another note, and that's one of the differences also with the TN is that you don't always, the individual does not always have to be hired as an employee. So
Mhm.
if a role in the U.S. is available and is typically fulfilled by contractors, they can actually they can be an independent contractor under a TN.
Okay. Okay. So, with this, I have another question over here from one of the anonymous member, which I'm definitely going to read. But before that, I have also received a question on WhatsApp, Fadi. And the question is, what if someone had a 3-year degree from India? Do they qualify for a TN?
They would need to get their education evaluated. And just
Okay.
having the degree itself, obviously, it doesn't make them qualified. It's having the degree evaluated, as well as seeing what the role is, and again, do they meet all the aspects that are required for the TN?
All right. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for answering that. I hope you have got the answer. And now I would like to read out this anonymous member's question, which was posted a few days back. And he says, he or she says, "Hi, I recently received a job offer from a US company and need to obtain a TN visa. I currently reside in Arizona, and since the Canadian border is quite far, I'm looking for best options for my TN visa application. Could someone advise me on the best course of action? Should I apply for a TN visa at the Mexico border? What do you have to say?"
Mhm. I've had clients that have applied for their TN uh, at the Mexican-U.S. border, and it's
Mhm.
generally not, it's worked out I think in every instance. Frankly, I think that U.S. U.S. CBP at the Mexico U.S. port of entry, they probably have other things to look out for. So a Canadian coming in with the proper paperwork, presenting themselves as they should, and making the application. And obviously, sometimes there's questions that are asked to the individual by the adjudicator, but I would, if the application is well done, and they can, yes, they can apply for the TN at the Mexico-U.S. border, and in fact, sometimes it's even it's a strategy. Sometimes it's better to do it that way.
All right. Okay. And he also has a second part, and the question says, "Is it better to go to Canadian border? If so, which crossing has the highest approval rate and is the easiest for obtaining a TN visa?"
So going to the Canadian border is not, again, it may not be necessary, and you may save yourself some expenses of travel to Canada. And for someone in this scenario, by the way, they would need to exit the U.S. and then re-enter to apply for the TN. In Canada, there are many port of entries that they can go to in the GTA, in the Greater Toronto area. Generally, I recommend the Peace Bridge currently to for applicants to go to.
Okay. So this anonymous member, I hope you have got your answer. In case you have another follow-up, please, you can write to us. You can, post your question in the comments below. We will definitely get back to you with an answer. And now I also have one more question here from another viewer or a person. He says, "Hi to all. I have a question regarding TN support letter. My employer said he will give me a job offer, but for supporting letter, do I need to ask them to write it, or either I could ask notary to write and stamp, then signed by my employer?"
Yeah. So typically with the application, the support letter should be something that's signed by the employer. Whether that's something employers sometimes they get their employees to or potential employees to help draft it. They may elect to work with a law firm. That's typically the what I call the meat and potatoes of the application, right? It's not just talking about what the offer is; it's talking about how the individual qualifies for the TN. It ties everything together, so it is a pretty important document to include. With that document, technically, it's a document that speaks for itself. So the better written the letter is, then perhaps the fewer questions that the applicant may have when applying for it, particularly when it's an in-person application. But getting a notary to stamp it, or all that's unnecessary. So long as the employer is signing off on the document, there are some port of entries that where they can even have a scanned copy of the letter. It's okay, but I still generally prefer when time allows for it for an original signed document to be carried with the individual at the port of entry.
Okay. Okay. So thank you so much for posting your question, and I hope you have got your answer. But with this, it reminds me of a question, Fadi. So you know the U.S. labor market is fluctuating due to the tech layoffs, as you know, right? So
Right.
what do you think? What do you think is the possibility for 2025? Do you think more TN visas will be available, or few TN visas are going to be available in the coming year?
Yeah. So I don't think there's anything that's going to change. There's not going to be a cap added to the TN. I can't see that happening. So if somebody is already on a TN and they do get laid off, they have options, including do they take their time to leave the U.S. They can file technically for a change of status until they maybe find another role for which they may qualify for, and maybe get a TN for. But there are options, and I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to be limiting the individual from getting another TN, so long as they obviously can get a job offer. Sometimes individuals are really settled in the U.S. Maybe they've been on the TN for more than 5 or 6 years. I've heard of some people that have been using a TN for more than 10 years. I've had clients that have done that. And so, to be uprooted with a layoff would be obviously very unfortunate. But hopefully, getting yourselves back on your feet to maybe find another role. But if it doesn't look like there's going to be anything coming up in the horizon, but you still want to remain in the U.S., again, applying for a change of status or leaving and re-entering as a visitor. That's one way to do it. There's certain strategies you can use post layoff, so long as the person knows that they can't overstay their status. That's all.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much for answering the question again, Fadi. Now, let me quickly take one more question from Facebook, and then we can move to a viewer's question. So, it's actually a tax-related question, is what the person has said. The person says, "It's my first timer as TN visa working in the US, but I recently got my TN visa for this financial year. I mostly stayed in Canada, so I believe I have to pay Canadian taxes as majority of stay is in Canada. But do I need a request any special document from US employer?"
So I actually don't provide any advice with respect to tax. I would highly recommend for anybody with this scenario to reach out to there are accountants that deal with both U.S. and in Canada. And if I mean even if you send me an email, I can I can provide a some references in this instance.
Okay, okay. So maybe we can ask the person. So this anonymous member, if you can reach out, if you can write an email to Fadi, so maybe he can, help you with some contact details. You can email him at fadi@uscanvisa.com, fadi@uscanvisa.com. Now, coming to our viewers' question, I think that's it from the Facebook groups. Now, coming to our viewers' question, let me quickly take Dhanush's question. Dhanush here has posted a question on YouTube, and he says, Why do TN visa applications get denied, and what strategies can I use to increase my chances of approval considering the latest immigration policies and regulations?
Yeah, I mean, TNs can be denied for a variety of reasons. Sometimes the focus can be on the person's education. Sometimes the focus can be on the role itself. Sometimes it's a variety of. It could be that the person has been on a TN for a long time, and or has been on other TNs for a long time, and it looks like it's being used as a means to remain in the U.S. Indefinitely, and because the regulations do speak to this being as a temporary status. Again, that aspect may have to be addressed. Even when it comes to the very first applications for TN, a person should be prepared to provide, if requested, just any documentation to show that they have ties to their home country. So going back to strategies that you can use to increase your chance for approval, make sure your your application, you need to have a quality application. I've seen instances of people that were denied, and some of this were professionally prepared. Some people just some of these applicants, they had their HR prepare documents. Sometimes the individual prepared the documents on behalf of the company, and the company just signed off on it. Just be very careful and know that it really does obviously make a difference. The quality of the application. If it looks like there are some inconsistencies, if there's inconsistencies from questions or answers that are being asked by CBP, and it contradicts the paperwork that's in the that's been submitted, that by itself can be a reason to deny it. And what I like to do is I like to actually prepare clients so they know what questions they can anticipate, and to make sure that they understand their role properly, right? If the sometimes the applicants, they're looking at the paperwork on their way to the border or on their way to the airport, right? You got to be like, take it serious, because the process has been explained as being so simplistic. Don't you can't look at that wholeheartedly from all aspects. You got to take it serious, because once a person gets a denial, overcoming that denial is just it's exponentially more difficult, right?
Right, right. So we also have a second part to Dhanush's question. But before I take that, Norma is actually here from LinkedIn, and she has asked a question. So I would like to take that first. So Norma says, is it possible to change from TD visa to a TN visa?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So TD, just for the viewer's sake, it is a dependent status. So it's a spouse. Technically, it could be a child of a TN visa or status holder. But yeah, to change to a TN, that can be done from within the U.S. With a change of status to TN, or maybe just as easy to leave the U.S. and then re-enter and present the paperwork for a new TN application.
So are there any specific documents that, if she's planning to do that, so she should have them ready?
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at it as being really, it's a TN application is what it is, regardless of the underlying initial status that the person held. So it is, it's not like there's a shortcut to go from a TD to a TN. It is a full application that has to be done. It's just a matter of, if the person's applying from within the U.S., they have to make sure that they're changing their status and indicating it's going from TD to a TN. But it's just as easily done again if applying in person, and there's nothing quite as quick as applying in person, right? There's sometimes people that apply for a change of status or applying for a new TN through the USCIS, and knowing that sometimes they need to apply for premium processing to get a quicker response. Well, today
Right.
premium processing is over $2,800, so that's $2,800 USD just for premium processing, when you could probably get a ticket for even less and fly out or drive out and apply and re-enter, and knowing that there's probably going to be other costs, including the TN, the government fees itself, plus the actual getting perhaps legal fees and so forth.
Okay. So if people from Canada are watching this show right now and they are, preparing to apply for a TN visa, so Fadi, what proactive steps should they take, to navigate the potential changes in immigration policy, post election?
Yeah, so I think I sort of touched on that earlier. If there is a something on the horizon with respect to a potential for applying for a TN, this is coming from a company's perspective or coming from the beneficiary or the applicant's perspective. It's probably a good idea to maybe to get a start on it, just in case there are any abrupt changes that come in the future. Again, I'm not anticipating that, because even with the Trump previous administration, although we have seen more stricter adjudications and interpretation perhaps of these applications, it's there's they're still being issued. Were there additional or an increase in denials? I think across the board, I think that's the understanding. But regardless of that, if somebody was on the fence now, and they may be applying for it, in early 2025, or there is an opportunity to apply for it now. Applying for it now would be a better option, and also even just applying through, even with the USCIS petition. Okay, with the USCIS application, that can be applied for up to 6 months in advance of the start date. So if looking at 6 months from today's date, you can have a start date in early, even in March of 2025, and it can still be applied for today using the USCIS.
Okay, thank you so much for answering the question, Fadi. Norma, I hope you have also got your answer. Thank you so much for your question. If you have a follow up, you can you can still write your follow up. We'll be more than happy to take it. Dan is also here. He says, great topic on TN visas. Thank you so much, Dan, for your comment. Now, let me come back to Dhanush's question. He also had a second part to his question. He says, what potential changes to the TN visa program could arise from the 2024 presidential election, and how might these impact existing and future TN visa applications and current visa holders?
Yeah, so I mean, I think this topic has now been. I think we've covered it.
Yeah.
In terms of the potential changes, it's not. We don't know exactly, what's in store. Nobody has a crystal ball, but if things are similar to as they were in the past, we're still going to have we're going to still have the USMCA. Is it going to be updated or upgraded or downgraded in the future? We don't really know. But I think the fact that there are there's a category of occupations that will continue to remain on this list. Anybody that is on a TN, and if there is a change that comes out, I don't think it's going to be backdated. That wouldn't make sense. But moving forward, again, is there going to be some drastic change when it comes to the TN? I don't think the TN is going to be the first place that any administration is going to look at for to make a big splash with immigration. It's not. It's used quite a bit from Canadian professionals, but it's used in a very limited capacity, because there's only 60 some odd occupations on there, and there probably even like less than 10 that are used most frequently.
Right, but do you believe that TN visa will remain a viable option for Canadian professionals, or
I think
is
it
there?
would.
Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
But do you believe there is also a risk of it getting significantly altered?
Yeah, so I think it's going to remain intact, at least for the foreseeable future, and that but if it doesn't, then I mean there are there would be ways to hopefully navigate it. Of course, it's going to be specific to the individual's situation itself. But in terms of there's this topic of the TN and having a vast change. There's nothing that I've read official or unofficial is indicating that way. But as history shows, I think that if there is a Trump administration in power, then you can anticipate that getting a TN might be more difficult.
Okay, okay. So, Fadi, if you see, we didn't realize that, but we have crossed the 1 hour mark. And
Yeah.
but if you have some more time, I think, we can take few more questions from the viewers, because we still have Manju's question and Chandra's question over here. Can we please take that?
Sure. Yeah, I think these will be the last two questions, but no
Right.
problem.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So, Manju says, are okay, do we have a first? Okay, I'm a Canadian citizen working as a contractor for a US company from Canada. I've been offered a full time position with the same company in the US. They don't have Canadian entity, and they are willing to sponsor me. I'm deciding between applying for a L1A or a TN visa. I manage an entire department and report directly to the CTO. My work history includes working for the same company as a contractor and previously through a third party company. Would I be eligible for an L1A visa, or would a TN visa be better option for my situation? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. What do you have to say?
Yeah, so there's, two sort of issues that come to mind here. First is that she indicated that there is no Canadian company. So for an L1 to be suitable, it is it's an intercompany transfer. So it's transferring from, showing that the person has been employed by a foreign company for at least 1 year in the last 3 years, and then they've been transferred to the US. So that by itself is an issue. Another issue is that she indicated that she was, she worked as a contractor, and for an L1 to qualify, there has to be an actual employment. So there's an employer-employee relationship, not not as an independent contractor. So would a TN be a better option? At first glance, it could be an option. It may not be the only option. I think this individual would need to get some individual legal advice to understand the full options moving forward.
Okay. So Manju, I hope you have got your answer. Thank you so much for your question. Even if the show ends, you can continue posting your follow-ups. We can definitely answer them maybe in our next episode with Fadi. So you can continue posting your questions. Chandra is also here, and Chandra says, my company has several TN visa holders on staff, and we are concerned about potential changes to the program. How can we prepare for possible adjustment to eligibility criteria or application processes? And what proactive steps can we take to ensure continuity of employment?
Yeah, so without knowing that there's any changes, that are coming, to the horizon, I don't think that there is really any alternative ways to make sure that they continue to qualify for a TN. If they're looking at some other options, such as maybe start looking into the H-1B, right? If this is a real concern, but there also could be changes to the H-1B program. We don't know that. Having a sort of keen ear on any changes on policy is probably the best thing that can be done, and just keep yourself educated, so that you remain currently in a proper status, and hopefully would remain to do so. Without knowing what changes could come about, not even knowing which administration is going to be, it's going to prevail. We don't have a crystal ball to say, yes, you need to do this, that, or the other thing. So just keep an eye out, and if there are any changes that are looming for particularly the TN, then I'm sure it's going to take a long time for it to be implemented, right? It's not going to be something that happens overnight.
Okay. So thank you so much, Chandra, for your question. I hope you've got the answer. If you have a follow-up, you can also please continue posting your follow-ups. We can take them maybe in our next episode with Fadi, or we will have our experts answer to your questions. And if you want to directly get in touch with Fadi, so here are his contact details. You can reach out to attorney Fadi Minawi on his number, which is 716-281-8018. And he also has one more number. You can also reach out to him on this number, which is 647-528-8253. You can also email him at fadi@uscanvisa.com. You can also visit his website for more information, which is www.uscanvisa.com. Thank you so much for being here, Fadi. It was great having you. Thank you so much for such insightful answers. We would love to have you back with another topic, maybe.
Thank you, Rajni. Yeah, I would certainly like to continue working with you, and we can talk about other topics. That's not a problem.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your kind words, and I hope you enjoyed, your first time here on Immigration and
Definitely.
Jobs Talk.
Yeah, definitely. It was, and your questions are very insightful and helpful, I think, for the viewer. So, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. You have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
And to our lovely viewers, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your questions. And we are hoping to see you very soon with another webinar. And yes, if you would like to get in touch with me, you can reach out to me on this number, which is 732-707-9151. You can also email me at rajni@staffingly.com. You can also visit our website, which is www.staffingly.com. And thank you so much again for being here. Hoping to see you very soon in another webinar. You guys, until then, you guys keep on watching, keep on subscribing to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. But for now, I'll have to take your leave. I am Rajni Bharara signing off. Take care. And like I say, please always keep on watching and keep on subscribing to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Bye for now.